We've made it. Week 1 of the fantasy playoffs begin on Thursday night, and we've got a full 32 teams to pluck from the rest of the way. Today, we are continuing our love-hate series as I look into 3 players I'm looking to start everywhere and 3 players I'm looking to sit. But before we dig in, head over to 4for4.com, use promo code YouTube to get yourself 25% off any subscription plan. Start Jaleel McLaughlin. Analyzing the Broncos' backfield rotation is enough to make one's head spin, but with the great matchup standing in front of them, we at least need to give it a shot. The Colts currently sit at 29th in schedule-adjusted fantasy points allowed to the running back position, thanks in large part to their 31st ranking in non-quarterback rushing yards per game at 123.5. Indianapolis is coming out of their bye, just one game removed from Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson combining for 135 yards on the ground. The matchup here is, of course, not the issue. It's digging into who we should actually stick in a lineup to take advantage of it. We can eliminate rookie Audric Estime, who was all of 12 carries on a 13.8% snap share since his 14-carry Week 10, though beat writer Nick Kosmider recently opined that he has probably earned a longer look in that role in reference to the short yardage work that Javonte Williams has handled with mostly poor results. This leads us to Jaleel McLaughlin, who is coming off of a career-high 84 yards on 14 carries in a game where head coach Sean Payton mentioned they could beat the Browns defense with quote-unquote sweeps and toss plays. Well, McLaughlin might be in luck here. When filtering Sports Info Solutions database to only pitch, stretch, and sweep running plays, the Colts rank 31st in points allowed above average at negative 3.13. which is a fancy EPA-focused way of saying that the defense is allowing more yards and touchdowns on these plays than they should be. If Peyton and the Broncos are privy to this information, and I have no doubt that they are, the second-year players should get enough run to cash in as a fantasy running back 3 or possibly a low-end RB2. Start Adam Thielen. This might be the first time we've been able to talk positively about the Panthers in this space outside of Chuba Hubbard in the 2024 season. Not particularly because of the play of their offensive line, but because of a passing attack with lows so low, it's not worth pointing out potential fantasy pieces on a non-bye week. Luckily for us, Bryce Young has looked far more competent since his early season benching, accruing a 752-yard, 3-touchdown, and 1 interception stat line over these last 3 weeks, which has led to multiple options popping up as waiver wire targets after they turned into complete afterthoughts earlier in 2024. While the interior of the Panthers' O-line, particularly their free agent edition guards, has been a strength throughout the season, their tackles have put together some strong games against some tough opponents over these last 3 weeks. Left tackle Akeem Ekwonu has allowed only 1 sack since returning to the lineup from his ankle injury back in Week 12, and right tackle Taylor Moton has been a stud on the other side, ranking behind only Tristan Wirfs and Lane Johnson in PFF's pass blocking efficiency metric at 98.7. This matchup and Adam Thielen's reawakening after his 21 targets in these last 2 weeks make him a very solid wide receiver 3 in Week 15, while rookie Xavier Legette is a great deep league flex option for managers struggling at the position. Start Hunter Henry. Henry is currently rostered in exactly 40% of leagues, a number that reflects how many fantasy managers chose to part ways with him during the Patriots bye week in Week 13 and Week 14 to make room for another streaming tight end. However, with Week 15 on the horizon, Henry should absolutely be back on the radar as a priority pickup as a tight end streamer. His recent performance, highlighted by a solid 7 for 75-yard stat line in Week 13, shows his value even in games where some of his production comes during garbage time. We obviously don't care when the production comes, just that it does come. And more importantly, that marked the 4th time in 5 games that Henry has seen at least 8 targets, reinforcing his role as the team's leading target earner. Despite the occasional appearance of Austin Hooper, who sometimes swoops in to steal some red zone opportunities, Henry remains a very reliable option. While Hooper's presence does cap Henry's ceiling somewhat, particularly in terms of touchdown potential, Henry is still on track to lead the Patriots in nearly every major receiving categories, maybe aside from those touchdowns. This consistency makes him an excellent high-floor, moderate ceiling play for the first rounds of the fantasy playoffs, especially for managers who already have plenty of star power at the other positions. Henry's steady involvement in the passing game and target share offers a reliable option at tight end during a critical part of the season when positional security matters most. Don't let his bye week induced drop in roster percentage fool you. Henry's value is too strong to ignore. Sit CJ Stroud. Much like what happened to the Arizona Cardinals last week, the Dolphins DST also has an unsightly negative 1 point performance on their resume coming back in week 13, but they're the side of the ball I'd rather have in fantasy lineups in week 15. They have a great chance to jump on the other side of the zero against a Texans O-line that has had some shaky performances against good pass rushes. Though they have looked strong over their 3 most recent games, it's worth pointing out that the Titans rank 23rd in pressure rate and the Jaguars rank 31st. Even with those pass rushes being stymied, the Texans still rank 25th in adjusted sack rate at 9% and 30th in pressure rate allowed at 36.5%. CJ Stroud's struggles in a muddy pocket have continued as he ranks 17th in yards per attempt at 6.4 and 31st in touchdown rate at 2.1% after finishing 2023 19th and 35th, respectively, in those metrics during his rookie season. While Laramie Tunsil is still playing elite ball at left tackle, there are some issues elsewhere on the line, namely right guard Shaq Mason, who has already allowed the most sacks of his 10-year career, and we still have 4 more games to play. Stroud is still rostered in nearly 90% of leagues right now, despite scoring more than 1 touchdown only once since the middle of October. While Nico Collins is game and matchup proof, the same can't be said for Tank Dell, who should also ride the pine in the first round of the fantasy playoffs. Sit Nick Chubb. It might seem harsh to put Chubb in the sit category for the second consecutive week, but the situation remains grim for the veteran running back heading into week 15. His 48-yard performance against a porous Steelers run defense, which ranks 28th in schedule-adjusted fantasy points allowed to running backs, now appears to be a best-case scenario as he prepares to face the Chiefs. Kansas City boasts the league's top-ranked defense against the position, making this one of the toughest possible matchups for Chubb. And unfortunately, the matchup isn't the only concern. The Browns enter the game as 4-point home underdogs, a script that likely spells more passing and fewer opportunities for Chubb. Jameis Winston's tendency to drop back often in these scenarios has not favored Chubb since his return from injury. Over the last month, Chubb has seen minimal involvement in the passing game, running just 15 combined routes in weeks 11 and 13, followed by only 1 third-down snap in week 14. Meanwhile, Jerome Ford has taken on an expanded role once again, handling 14 opportunities to Chubb's 12 last week, and even Pierre Strong has seen a larger share of critical third downs in the past couple of games. Looking ahead, things don't get any easier. The Browns' remaining schedule includes high-scoring opponents like the Bengals and Dolphins in weeks 16 and 17, both capable of forcing Cleveland into pass-heavy game scripts once again. For now, Chubb's usage and tough matchups make him a very risky play at any point in the fantasy playoffs. Sit DeVonta Smith. In a conservative play-calling effort to reduce the chance of a gigantic collapse like they had in the 2023 season, Jalen Hurts is averaging 14.7 completions since the Eagles' Week 5 bye, shrinking the reception pie to the point that A.J. Brown is leaking his displeasure with his mobile quarterback. And if Brown isn't getting his just desserts right now, where the heck does that leave DeVonta Smith? In no man's land, essentially. In Smith's Week 14 return from his hamstring hiccup, he played essentially 100% of the team's snaps, notching a 92.9% route participation and showing no ill effects from the injury. He even led the team with a 23.8% target share and found the end zone, but it only led to 11.7 half PPR points. That's because that 23.8% target share only led to 6 targets and kept him under 40 yards receiving for the 3rd game in a row. While we can understand AJ's frustration about not getting the ball enough and essentially running wind sprints out there, there's not much impetus for the Eagles to change their ways, considering they have won all 8 of their post-bye games. While A.J. Brown might fit perfectly into the squeaky wheel narrative, it's hard to see how that is going to help Smith in the fantasy box score. Against the Steelers defense that ranks 7th in schedule-adjusted fantasy points to the position, it's best to find another wide receiver 3 type to plug in for DeVonta.